In this video, we're going to evaluate how Canada's electoral system actually functions. If you recall, we talked about Canada's single-member districts, a very easy-to-understand system that's sometimes called first past the post. You win with a plurality and not a majority, which can pose some problems because it ignores something called the popular vote. Now, what exactly is the popular vote? Well, we left off with an example where in our 7-riding country, the citizens all voted and the blue party won a majority of 4 seats. However, if we look at the last column here, the popular vote, the blue party did not get the most votes across the country. In fact, the orange party did. The orange party got the most votes, then the red party, and then the blue party. The blue party actually got the fewest votes in the country. However, that's not how we decide the elections in a first-past-the-post system. In the first-past-the-post system, we ignore that popular vote and give control of Parliament to the party that won the most ridings. Now, that causes some problems at the riding level. For example, if we look at riding 7 was a very close race. 4 votes, the margin of victory. However, in riding 3, we can see the orange party won with a huge margin of 20 votes. So what happens if only they could have moved some of those votes over to riding 7, then they would have won riding 7 as well. This is the idea of wasted votes. All my supporters are concentrated in riding 3. We're going to run up this where we're going to give our candidate a big victory, yet we might lose other ridings by a very, very narrow margin. And that's how voters might feel in some ridings, that their vote is wasted because they're not actually having a say in forming the government by looking at that popular vote. So how does this look visually? Well, if we look at the 2019 federal election, the popular vote broke down like this. The Conservative Party won the popular vote with 34%, Liberals 33%, strong showing by the NDP at 15%, then the Bloc and the Greens, which were both pretty close, around 7%. But that's not what Parliament looks like. Parliament looked like, after this election, a Liberal minority government. They got 46% of the seats, even though they only had 33% of the vote. So they got a tremendous boost from that disconnect between the popular vote and the actual seats in Parliament. The NDP didn't do so well. They got about half of the seats that were commensurate with their support. This type of system, a single-member plurality, it disadvantages parties that don't have a lot of support in one place, but they have a broad support across the country, like the Green and the NDP. It does reward parties like the Bloc, who have all of their votes clustered in one spot. Even though they only got 7% of the popular vote, that turned into 9% of the seats. So there is some discrepancies there. What else could you do? What are some of the other options? A proportional representation system would award seats based on that popular vote number, and it would ignore ridings. A mixed member proportional would sort of combine both. It would give some seats the same way we do single member plurality, but it would also have a handful of seats that would be split up according to PR calculations to try and get a number that's closer to the popular vote. Alternate vote, also called ranked ballots, where candidates in each riding would rank their choices, and there would be sort of instant runoffs to ensure that the winner in each riding had a majority of support. We do this in London, Ontario, or at least London did this in the 2018 municipal elections. It's not clear how far into the future London will be allowed to do that. Just for the sake of comparison, here's how Canada's elections would look in the 2019 election results if they had have selected a PR system instead. So right away we would see we'd have a conservative minority, or they might have to form a coalition because there's not a lot of seats there. The NDP would have 54 seats and the Bloc would have 26. So the NDP would have more, the Bloc would have less. And so we could see how the focusing on the popular vote would really change the results in Parliament. Parliament would look a lot different with more parties having more effective representation. So just to recap the electoral formula, there are some challenges with our first past the post system. The winner only gets a plurality, not a majority. And that could happen at the national level too, because the seats in Parliament might not reflect the will of the voters. the system ignores the popular vote. And then you get the regionally concentrated parties that do very well, then the broad national representative parties that might have only a little bit of support across the country, they're not going to fare very well. At the end of the day, voters in some parts of the country are going to feel like their votes are wasted. And so these are some of the criticisms of Canada's first past the post system.